McDonald's operates more than 40,000 locations across over 100 countries. It is one of the most recognized brands on the planet. Harvey's, a burger chain that opened the same year McDonald's was still figuring out its franchise model, has spent over 6 decades operating almost entirely within the borders of one country, Canada. That gap is so wide it looks like failure from the outside. But what if it isn't? By the end of this video, you'll know exactly why Harvey's stayed small on purpose, and what that decision has meant for the brand's survival in a market dominated by American giants. The story starts on April 1st, 1959 in Richmond Hill, Ontario. Two men named George Sukornik and Rick Morin wanted into the fast food business. North America was in the middle of a burger boom. Drive-ins were spreading across the continent. Chains were racing to lock down territory. Sukornik and Morin formed an equal partnership and started planning their first location. The name they settled on was not planned at all. While flipping through the Toronto Telegram, Morin spotted a classified notice announcing that a local car dealership called John Harvey Motors was shutting down and selling off its assets. One of those assets was a large outdoor sign. It simply read Harveys. Having a custom illuminated sign built from scratch would have cost serious money. Buying a used one from a closing dealership was cheap and practical. Morin bought it on the spot, dropped the name he had originally wanted, and planted the Harveys sign outside their new location. The brand that now feeds Canadians coast to coast got its name because two entrepreneurs were watching their budget. The site they chose had a history worth noting. It had previously housed a Dairy Queen that went bankrupt because the area was heavily seasonal, only pulling real foot traffic during warmer months. Sukornik and Morin knew this going in. They signed the paperwork expecting they would have to close every winter just to stay out of the red. That shutdown never came. Demand was high enough that the location stayed profitable all year round. A big part of that early success came from how they designed the customer experience. While American chains were building their businesses around speed and uniformity, Harvey's introduced something that ran in the opposite direction. After paying for their order, customers walked the length of a glass counter and told the employee exactly which fresh toppings to add to their burger. Lettuce, tomato, onion, pickles, olives, cucumbers, sauces. The customer made every call. The burger was flame-grilled, but the finishing was entirely personal. Harvey's handed control to the person eating the food, not the person cooking it. This was not normal. The entire logic of fast food at that time was built around removing decisions, not adding them. McDonald's had perfected a kitchen assembly line where every burger came out the same way every time. That model was designed to move lines fast and keep labor costs low. Harvey's deliberately slowed the process down. They made the garnish counter the center of the experience. That choice, made in the first months of operation, turned out to be the seed of everything that followed. In this video, you'll understand why that single operational decision shaped not just the menu, but the entire growth strategy for the next 60+ years. When Cara Operations purchased Harvey's in 1979, the chain entered a different phase of its corporate life. Cara, which later rebranded as Recipe Unlimited, was not interested in building a single global brand. Its strategy was to own and defend Canadian market share across multiple domestic brands. Swiss Chalet, St. Hubert, and Harvey's all sat under the same parent. The goal was depth inside Canada, not reach beyond it. This matters because the decision to stay inside Canada was not made in a vacuum. Harvey's corporate parent was actively choosing not to chase international franchising. Other Canadian brands took different paths. Tim Hortons pushed into the United States and later into the Gulf states. McDonald's and Burger King had already made the United States their home turf decades earlier. Harvey's, sitting inside a conglomerate focused on the domestic market, simply was not pointed toward the exit. As of 2023, Harvey's operates approximately 400 locations across Canada. Every province has at least one, with one notable exception: British Columbia. After more than 60 years of operation, the country's westernmost province still does not have a Harvey's. That is not an oversight. It reflects exactly the kind of slow, deliberate approach the brand has always taken. Rather than spreading thin and fast, Harvey's has filled in existing markets more carefully, building loyalty where it already had roots before committing resources somewhere new. Then in 2024, the company announced expansion plans that confirmed this philosophy rather than abandoned it. Harvey's stated plans to grow toward 500 Canadian locations over a 5 to 10 year period. The target is domestic. No international expansion was mentioned. The chain is not trying to become McDonald's. It is trying to become more completely Harvey's, across more of the country it already calls home. The contrast with its competitors is sharp. When Tim Hortons crossed into the United States, it ran directly into a market where Canadians' nostalgia for the brand meant nothing. The coffee drinker in Ohio had no childhood memories attached to a Timbit. The loyalty that made Tim Hortons a cultural institution in Canada did not travel across the border. The brand struggled to hold ground against Dunkin' and Starbucks on foreign soil, and has never fully cracked the American market despite years of effort. Harveys, by staying home, avoided exactly that collision. In Canada, the brand carries something that cannot be replicated quickly. Generations of Canadians grew up walking that garnish counter. They remember the orange trays, the pickles lined up under glass, the flame smell off the grill. That memory is an asset that no amount of advertising budget can manufacture from scratch in a market where no one has ever eaten a Harvey's burger. Choosing not to spend money trying to build that recognition abroad meant Harvey's could keep investing in the market where it already had it. The customization model that Sukornik and Morin built in 1959 also made international expansion structurally harder. A system built around personal choice at a live counter requires more trained staff, more fresh product prep, and more time per transaction than a fully standardized kitchen. That works beautifully when you are building dense loyalty in one market. It becomes expensive and complicated when you are trying to train thousands of new franchise operators in dozens of different countries, each with different supply chains and labor costs. The very thing that made Harvey's special made it harder to replicate at global scale. In 1998, the company introduced what it called custom combos, formalizing the customization approach into the menu structure. By that point, the garnish counter had already been the brand's identity for nearly 4 decades. The 2015 commitment to using 100% Canadian beef reinforced the same message. This brand is not trying to be universal. It is trying to be specifically and unapologetically Canadian. That positioning has become more strategically valuable over time, not less. The Canadian beef commitment gives Harvey's a sourcing story that resonates with Canadian consumers who care about where their food comes from. It also creates a direct tie between what is on the grill and what is grown inside the country. That is a hard story to tell convincingly if you are operating kitchens in 40 countries with 40 different supply chains. Some critics have pointed out that Harvey's could have grown more aggressively within Canada itself, let alone internationally. 400 locations in a country of nearly 40 million people is a modest footprint compared to what McDonald's operates domestically. There are towns in Ontario and Alberta that do not have a Harvey's, even though they have been served by competitors for decades. The British Columbia absence alone represents a major urban market. Vancouver is one of Canada's largest cities, and it has never had a Harvey's restaurant. The 2024 announcement of growth toward 500 locations is, at least in part, an acknowledgement that there is room to grow without going anywhere near a border crossing. The plan closes gaps rather than opens new frontiers. It is the same logic that has guided the brand since the beginning. Get it right where you are before you reach for somewhere else. There is something worth examining in how rare this approach has become. The modern restaurant industry treats expansion as proof of health. A chain that is not growing its location count is assumed to be stagnating. Harvey's quietly challenges that assumption. It has maintained a loyal customer base across nearly every Canadian province for over 60 years without needing a presence in 40 countries to justify its existence. The depth of that loyalty, built one garnish counter at a time, has kept the brand standing through decades of competition from chains with far more resources. Harvey's is not smaller because it lost a race. It is smaller because it chose not to run the same race. While other chains measured success in global locations and quarterly expansion announcements, Harvey's measured it in how well it understood a specific customer in a specific country who wanted to assemble their own burger the way they liked it. In a country where so many brands chased the dream of becoming the next international giant, Harvey's made the opposite bet. It set out to become the most Canadian option available. Not the biggest chain in the world, but the one that felt like home to the people already there. More than 60 years later, with 500 locations on the horizon and not one of them outside Canada, that bet still looks like it was worth making. If you want more stories about Canadian brands that built something lasting by going against the grain, subscribe and stay with us. There are more of them than you might expect.